In honor of Black History Month, the EAC will be speaking with pioneering voting rights advocates who are working to expand the institution of voting. I'm joined here today by Marcia Johnson-Blanco, the co-director of the Voting Rights Project at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law. At the Lawyers Committee, Marcia oversees the program and advocacy work of the Voting Rights Project, including election protection, the nation's largest nonpartisan voting rights advocacy organization, promotes election reform. In her role, Marcia ensures minority participation in the redistricting process and ensures those with felony convictions regain their right to vote. Marcia, thank you for joining me. It's an honor to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me here, Commissioner Hicks. I really look forward to talking to you about the work I do to engage the public in voting rights, and I also thank you for the work that you do here at the EAC to provide information to voters. I think it's very important that voters have the information they need to cast a ballot that counts.
We last spoke ahead of the 2016 election cycle when the Lawyers Committee was leading the Election Protection Coalition and offering a hotline service for voters to call to get help in the voting process. What's the Lawyer Committee doing for the 2018 election cycle?
So for the 2018 elections, we will continue to have the Election Protection Hotline available to answer any questions that voters have or help them with any problems that they encounter. So the 866 Our Vote hotline is available nationwide to help voters. In addition to the hotline, we're also going to have field programs in target states, and we're going to have the hotline available during primaries as well, including the Texas primary, starting with the Texas primary on March 6th and going through the year to the general election. In addition to the hotline, we're also working with partners on the ground who are helping voters register and helping them with information that they need in order to be able to vote. And we are also working using social media to provide voter education about the voting process, information, voter registration deadlines, early voting information. Basically, the Election Protection Coalition, with the hotline and the field program and our voter education work, just serves as a major resource for voters who have questions or just need information about the voting process.
What are some of the resources voters can get from LCCR to prepare for the midterm election?
So in addition to the hotline, which is your one-stop stop for getting information about voting, we also are preparing Know Your Rights materials. We're going to be very active in social media, giving registration and early voting deadlines and just general information that you need to vote. We're also updating our accompanying website, 866ourvote.org, matches the hotline.
Okay.
And that website is going to have resources from all the partners within the EP Coalition. And we also encourage voters to go to your Secretary of State's website or your local election official website. There are lots of resources out there. We try to capture as much as possible on the Election Protection website, but there are others as well.
Okay. You've spoken a lot about resources for voters. Are there any resources that LCCR has for election officials?
Well, usually we talk to election officials before elections. As part of the Election Protection Program, we have meetings with election officials and let them know about our program, how we're going to be on the ground, how we can engage and work with them. And if election officials need any assistance, we are available to provide any information. Sometimes they ask us, for example, to help with recruiting poll workers. I know that's always an ongoing challenge, particularly poll workers who speak Spanish or one of the Asian languages, and so we also provide that assistance as well.
Great. We're coming up on the 53rd anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. As you know, it's a landmark legislation that prohibits racial discrimination in voting. For all its benefits, however, I know that you've said that it could be strengthened. Can you talk a little bit about how the Voting Rights Act can be strengthened?
Yes, I think it's really important to talk about the Voting Rights Act. You know, I was reflecting on the fact that it's only in 1965 that the United States became a really inclusive democracy where everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, national origin, had access to the franchise. And the Voting Rights Act played a very important role in that. And with the Shelby County versus Holder decision, a very important provision within the Voting Rights Act, the provision that required jurisdictions, that determined which jurisdictions with a history of discrimination in voting had to submit voting changes for review before they could be implemented, was taken away. And that is something that Congress has not yet restored. I think it's a travesty that Congress has not yet acted to strengthen an iconic law such as the Voting Rights Act. And we really need that provision restored because they are jurisdictions that are making voting changes that have a negative impact on minority voters. And while we in the civil rights community are doing our best to fight back against that, we're missing an essential tool. And so the restoration of the full protections of the Voting Rights Act is really crucial.
Okay. You were in Selma when President Obama marked the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, an event that led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. During the event, tens of thousands of Americans walked across the Pettus Bridge, and Obama delivered a very powerful speech. And you observed that in Selma, it reminds us about how far we've come, but how far we need to go. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, as I said, we're a fairly young, inclusive democracy, even though the country is, I think, about 242 years old. As a full democracy, we're only about 53 years old. And I think the Voting Rights Act anniversary reminds us of that. But now we have states that are passing restrictive voting laws. We have civic education that's lacking. A lot of people aren't aware of what they need in order to be able to vote. And so there's so much more that needs to be done to ensure that every citizen can cast a ballot that counts. And we all have a role to play in doing that.
Okay. One of the issues you've been outspoken about is the need to involve more young people in the democracy, the need to engage young people in the election process beyond just casting a ballot at the polls. For instance, serving as election workers on election day, election judges, and election officials is also an issue that we here at the EAC have been deeply involved in. Can you elaborate a little bit about how the Lawyers Committee is working on those issues?
Yes, we're really reaching out to young people to make the link between the voting process and the issues that young people care about. So one of the things that gets a lot of attention are those offices that are at the top of the ticket. You know, the president, the governor, but usually local elections aren't featured as much as they should be. And we've been working with young people to make that link between the local elections and the issues they care about, the local elections and the resources in their communities, how the local elections with your school board, you're voting for the sheriff, voting for the district attorney. Those are the people who are going to be enacting the policies that these young people want to see enacted. And also, again, because there's a lack of civic education, just knowing about the voter registration process, working in high schools to get voters, young people registered. I think it's really great the states that have pre-registration, because you can have that conversation very early with young people about registering to vote and voting. And so when we start with young people, we create lifelong voters. And then we also want to work to make sure that their act of voting is something that goes as smoothly as possible, so they're not deterred by the process. So making sure that they have the information they need in order to vote, and that they're empowered at the polling place, going in, knowing what they need, voting on the issues they care about, and then seeing those results.
Marcia, it's been great and a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Me too.